Hello and welcome to this episode of Success Synergy Show. This is an episode on e-learning, and as you all know, e-learning is something very close to my heart because I feel all of the entrepreneurs can take this opportunity of e-learning very strongly, and they can create beautiful businesses out of e-learning business models. I have a very interesting person with me today. He is Mr. Jeremy Royster, and he has started something which is called FAIL, Fail University. He will just tell us in a moment why he is calling this Fail University. Mainly, it is all about utilizing e-learning with gamification to create more engaging lessons for the students. Welcome to the show, Jeremy. It's
Thank you,
a
Neena.
great
It's a
pleasure to
pleasure to
have
be
you
here.
here.
Thank you. Yeah,
Tell us
you're not.
about the Fail University. It's a beautiful concept. I mean, very attractive right at the first look. Please tell
Well,
us.
I'm glad you felt that way. I've had mixed reviews. There have been many who have asked me why on earth I would choose such a name as Fail for a university, and that kind of is the point because failure is stigmatized as something that's always bad, especially in schools where I spent most of my career, and I think that needs to change. So I'm trying to remove the stigma and reframe failure as a learning tool. Failure is opportunity if it's taken advantage of, if it doesn't create shame.
Failure is a stepping stone to success. We've all heard that, and we've all been told this all along our lives.
That's right. That's right.
And still it is stigmatized.
Yes. So FAIL, F-A-I-L, stands for Fearless Adventures in Learning. There is an implicit fear that comes with failure in many situations other than gaming. Failure is a part of gaming. It's a natural part of the learning process in a game, whether it's a board game or a video game. And game designers spend a great deal of time and effort trying to design the failures so that they are on a learning trajectory that is always upward and forward. So that I don't know if you're familiar with Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, but he is a professor philosopher who came up with the concept of flow. And he's on.
I've heard about it.
You have?
I've heard
Okay, yeah,
about
he's on TED Talks. So those listeners who want to learn more about him, you can look him up. Just look up Flow, actually, because you'll have a hard time spelling his name, as I have a hard time pronouncing it. So his concept is that there is this ideal spot in which a learner finds their flow, and that is it's the balance between difficulty and challenge, and that game designers try to create that perfect balance so that when a learner meets a new challenge, it's not so challenging that they are overwhelmed. It's just challenging enough, just beyond where they are starting from. And then when they master that challenge, and it may take repeated failures for them to get to that point, but once they've mastered that challenge, the difficulty level increases just enough. So once again, they're not overwhelmed, but they're excited by this challenge, and keeping that cycle going over and over again. That's the state of flow, and that's what we see in our children or any gamers that are not necessarily children, but you can see them sort of looking like they're completely engrossed in what
absorbed.
they're doing,
Yes,
absorbed. You can't even get their attention. My kids, I'll talk to them. They won't even have headphones on, and I can't get their attention because they are in a state of flow. And
right.
I know that even myself, I've found that to be disconcerting. That is, and I've had to train myself to not see that as something that's bad, because well, it depends, I think, sometimes on the source of like what kind of game we're talking about. I think there is a spectrum of quality, but that experience is a good experience, and it is a learning experience. In order for a game to be engaging, it needs to be teaching the learner how to be successful in the game. So I don't see why education can't be the same. In fact, I know that it can be from experience. You can create the same simulated environment where these repeated failures are no longer shameful, where these failures are part of a fun experience. And that is all about the environment that you create in your classroom or in your virtual classroom, as the case seems to be more and more often these days since COVID took hold of the earth. So fearless adventures in learning, I think that we can make them fearless. I don't think that our learning experiences have to be fearful, and there is so much fear in the classroom. My students still, even in, no matter how hard I try to create a safe, comfortable environment to share and make mistakes, no matter how many mistakes I make in front of my kids, modeling those mistakes and being open about not knowing something that they're asking me about, looking up answers, correcting my mistakes in front of them. No matter how often I do that, there is still fear. There are still a number of students who don't feel comfortable raising their hands and taking a risk at looking stupid. That
true.
is
That's very
pervasive.
true.
It's pervasive. So, and I've made some headway in alleviating some of that fear through gaming, because when you change the model of the classroom into a game, when you change the environment so that it feels like a game, you change the dynamic. You are no longer the instructor. You are no longer the presenter of information. You are no longer the center of attention. And then, believe me, I love to be the center of attention. I have a little theater in my background, and I enjoyed early in my teaching days. I spent a lot of time dressing up in costumes. I taught social studies and playing roles of different historical figures, and I loved that. But that was more about me than it was about the students. There were some students that loved that, and certainly they enjoyed it more than seeing me in my regular attire, and it was fine and all that. But it's not a guarantee of engagement for everyone,
Engagement for the students,
and it's not
yes.
sustainable, and it's not something that is something that's easy for everyone to do. It's, if you're not comfortable, doing that kind of thing, and most people wouldn't be, then you don't. Then what recourses do you have? And that's and I think the recourses are gamification or
Yes.
game design. So. What I've been doing of late, so the last 10 years or so, I've been developing a course not only in my 6th grade class, so I teach a range of ages right now. It's 6th graders and also graduate students who are aspiring and current teachers, and that's actually a perfect experimental range to try out these activities, I think, because aside from COVID, I think it's not ideal to have your elementary school students spending as much screen time as you might need for the kind of gamification environment that we are creating right now. In fact, I know that there are a lot of districts in the United States that are trying to keep their elementary school students in school to create that face-to-face environment, whereas the middle school and high school students are they're trying to make accommodations for them to do online learning. And I agree with that position. I think that that's more appropriate if as long as it's safe. But
as long as it is safe, because right
as
now
long as it,
I don't think anything can be said about safety measures as of now, because see, it is a disease which is spreading by people touching surfaces which are infected. It is
right.
surface to surface transmission, and virus has always been transmitted surface to surface. And when it comes, or rather, one aspect is this, and second is in coming in direct contact with somebody who's already contacted
Right.
the virus somehow. See, that way safety measures I don't think can really be actually well defined, because how many surfaces can be sanitized and how many people can be screened, how many times during the day can they be
Right.
screened? It's quite impractical. But when you're talking about gamification, Jeremy, sorry to be interrupting like this, but constantly my thought was going to corporate trainings.
Yes,
And corporate trainings, I've been a corporate trainer for a long time now, been a business coach for 10 years now, and I have seen that different corporate trainers are actually identified by the quality of games that they bring to the audience. And they are
right.
all adults, all
Right.
very well placed adults. And many times I've been training people who are more than my age. and who would actually be sitting on very important positions in big important companies, and then they
Yes.
would be looking down upon you as to what are you going to do, scrutinizing you rather minutely, and if you don't end up delivering as per the standards, they would be looking down upon you. So it's a very challenging situation. As you are talking about the students, see, these days students are also very evolved. They quickly see the teacher and immediately come to terms with the fact whether they can actually relate with a person or not relate with a person. That's just how the human mind is evolving.
Right.
It's no longer what it used to be in our days. I mean, I have a teacher who used to teach my brother, not even me, she used to teach my brother, and she lives close by. And whenever we used to go to the grocery store, many times I met her over there, I would be standing with my hands behind my back and actually wishing her. And later on, my brother asked me, "Why are you behaving like this? She's been my teacher." But that's the kind of disciplined environment we've been raised in, and that's that's the ingrained discipline which I don't even know what kind of teacher she was, or I mean, most of the time we don't even remember so many teachers of ours. So this, what I'm trying to get at is discipline was a done thing at that time. Engagement was a done thing. Even if you are going off to sleep in a class, you need to be paying attention over there. It could be demanded and it could be gotten at that point in time. Today, the student will just simply get up and say, "You are not engaging. You are not to." I mean,
Right.
what do you
And
have to
and
say about that?
and I think part of that generational shift is because the entertainment value of their experiences outside of school are so much more intense than they may have been for us. Uh,
Yes,
so so their expectations of something more engaging, I don't think are necessarily unreasonable. I think,
they're
in
not.
fact,
They're not, certainly.
and the problem is that we are having a difficult time competing with the outside environment
Yes.
because um, we have limited freedom to experiment, or maybe not freedom, not always freedom, limited freedom and time often to experiment with these new technologies. Now and it depends also on where you're teaching and the resources that the district has. I've been very fortunate that my district has had an infinite number of resources for me to play with. And I've also been fortunate that my subject area is not one that is intensely tested in a standardized way. So that gives me a little more flexibility, or has given me a little more flexibility to experiment. And not to mention, I have this theater background. I have a degree in instructional technology. So all of these things together have positioned me well to try this out. And and so and in trying it out, I will never go back, because as I was saying, the dynamic has shifted. Now I am a helper, I am a partner in achieving the goals that the students want to achieve. It becomes their goal. It's no longer me
Yes.
telling them which hoops to jump through. They're asking me how to jump through the hoops of their choice, they're choosing, to a degree. I mean, you can only give them
That's
so much
right.
choice. Giving them any
Yes.
choice at all is better than none, and that is part of what Dan Pink, I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Pink, what he heralds as the three characteristics of a intrinsically motivating learning environment. One is agency, so choice. Another is a sense of purpose, and another is an opportunity to master something, master a skill. So those three conditions can easily and cheaply be set up in a classroom, but it's a heck of a lot more effective if you're doing it online. Now, I know that I invite controversy when I say that. Maybe not so much now with COVID, and I think there's one positive outcome that's going to result from COVID, and that is that this necessary shift to using more online tools. Now, I'm not saying to the exclusion of face-to-face. I'm not saying that. We have to do it to the exclusion of face-to-face for safety under the COVID conditions.
Right.
But there are many, I think, teachers who have been reticent to make that shift because number one, it's daunting, it's unfamiliar. Number two, teachers have so much pressure from so many different points of interest, so many different stakeholders in the education process, the parents, the administrators. It's for them to pick their head. New initiatives coming all the time. There's always something new that has to be tried. how are they going to ever? There's so little time for them to find to experiment.
No, I
So
understand. I understand what you're saying because I don't know if you're aware of it, but India is also coming up with a new educational policy which will be implemented all over the country.
yeah. Oh,
And
I
it
was
was
not aware of that.
announced this last week only, and it's like a major paradigm shift in the entire way we are looking at education.
Is it in this direction? Are you seeing it in
Oh yes,
positive direction?
absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, absolutely in the progressive direction, definitely.
That's great.
See, kid learning is not my area of interest, but of course, I will have to reword this actually. It's definitely my area of interest, but not my action area. I
Right.
don't work with kids as such, but it's
Right.
definitely my area of interest because the same kids are going to grow up as adults, and when I start working with them, they will have the same kind of foundational educational elements in there,
Right.
which will be very hard to change late and the later years. So
Right. Right. No, I think there is definitely a value in setting them up to enjoy learning this early because it's the irony is that so many people I speak to have not started to enjoy learning until after they're done with school, right?
absolutely,
Because that's when
absolutely.
they've started to have the freedom to choose what they learn,
I,
right?
I'm one such person.
I'm one such person. Um,
I love learning, but I hated school all my life. So
yes.
I'm going on record and saying this, and then I'm very happy saying this. But
Yes,
I
well,
know.
you're not alone. I mean, we know that the dropout rates in the United States are reflective of that attitude. Boredom. There's statistics. I can't pull up the numbers in my head at the moment, but I think it was around 30. No, I'm going to get the numbers wrong. It's a significant number of percentage of students in high school
Yeah.
that complain of boredom, right? So, and we
Yes.
know this. Whether I have the statistics or not, we know it's true. We talk to our
We
own
know it
children.
is true.
It's happening because our school has been set up. Schoolwork has been set up as work, as something that should be difficult, something that should be something that we endure, something that we somehow find the strength to get through, to prove our mettle, to develop grit. And this is this is something, again, a reframing I'm trying to do because I'm a big fan of Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book Grit. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Um, but she has done a lot of research about what it takes to be successful, and her research found that one of the most important characteristic a person can have is what she defines as grit, which is the ability to persevere through multiple challenges, failures in achieving long-term goals. So this grittiness, certainly, it's something that does require you go through challenges, right? And we can't make everything easy. It's not. I'm not talking about making everything easy, but by training our students to recognize that failure can be learning and a learning opportunity, the failures don't have to be so painful. They don't have to be so shameful. And this is something that Brene Brown talks about. She's another
Right.
uh,
Right.
popular
Great proponent. Yes.
spokesperson right now. She's talking about the shame that's associated with failure in education and other situations. And that doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be that way. A person can experience failure and disappointment, but not be crippled by it. They can experience that failure and then take a moment after experiencing that failure, look at the potential opportunity there, and that's what we want to train. And in gaming, it happens immediately because it's fun, because you don't even hesitate. You want to keep going. You want to keep learning. You've got to get to that goal. Education can be the same way. I had a setback. Okay, what can I do now? What's the next angle? How do I pivot? What's
Yes.
the potential there? And all this, when done with students, I think we can build grit, and that's part of the F.A.I.L concept is fearless adventures in learning. We are building grit through gamification as well as teaching our students content. This recognition that failure is part of the process through gaming makes education more fun, and it has this spiraling effect, so that when they grow up, they've experienced multiple failures and the positive outcomes that can result
Yes.
from those
Yes.
failures.
The
And
resilience
so
that
when
is
they're
built.
adults, right, So when they're adults, I mean, we know that business people, people that are successful entrepreneurs, experience multiple failures most of the time, and they have to try something that hasn't been tried before to be a successful entrepreneur. The likelihood that that's going to be successful the first time around is very slim, right? So, so you try something. You may fail, or you may have to revise. You try again, revision, and this is not built into our grading system either. Revision is not. I mean, if you're in a language arts class, maybe this is more typical because you have to revise your writing, but revising your math problems. And now I may be speaking out of turn for some teachers. I know that there are many teachers who embrace these philosophies, but it's not built into the grade. It's not built into the system. It's not an easy. It's not an easy assumption to make that there's this revision piece that's built in, because we don't have standards-based grading in most cases. Standards-based grading would be something that is where a person works on a skill until they master that skill, and then they are given full credit for the mastery of that skill, no matter how many mistakes they made along the way. And that has been, our district even considered going that way, but the problem was that when we looked ahead to the high school, and the high schools have to be thinking about colleges, and the colleges are measuring GPAs, right? And your grade point average is an average of your failures and your successes. It's not a measure of how many successes you've had. It's a measure of both. And in this way, it makes failures something that are terrifying, because you know how if you're a high school student, you are painfully aware of how everything that is less than 100 is impacting your GPA and your prospects at choices of colleges that you want to go to. So it has to start from the top. We have to get our colleges on board and there is this mastery consortium that is trying to make headway in that department in trying to measure a student's mastery of various skills and be looking at portfolios as opposed to just GPAs, but we're not there yet. And still, the majority of colleges are still looking at GPAs as a huge part of the admission process. So if that is going to be the structure that we're working within, and it may be for a long time, then at the very least, let's make the experience outside of the grade as fun as possible. And so one way to do that is by creating that environment, and creating that environment that I'm talking about, this purpose, opportunities for mastery, and agency. That's a lot easier online than I don't know if I already said that, but it's a lot easier online.
Because of the multimedia approach, we have so many different tools. We can do so much online that is not really possible to be done in a face-to-face scenario. I'm also not cutting out face-to-face completely, but online you have such fabulous tools. When you want to show something here, you can immediately just click over there and it's appearing on the screen. You can't do it in a face-to-face situation. And say here we are sitting halfway across the world, talking as if we are sitting in the same room.
Right.
And I have so many people coming up and telling me online working is not really worthwhile. I seriously don't understand this. I've been working online this way, on coaching people one-on-one and in group situations for the last 10 years. I mean, when this hoo-ha happened about Zoom and other things, other online conferencing tools, I could not understand. I've been using Zoom for more than 8 years. I've been on a paid version, and when people did not even know Zoom, what Zoom really was. So, I mean, it's not all that difficult. It's the adaptability element has to be there on the ends of the instructors or the teachers, or whether we call them corporate trainers, or any person who is in the instructional role. That adaptability element, the flexibility has to be there to adapt to the various tools which are just available at your fingertips.
Right, and I think those people that are finding that the online learning is not effective, it's because of a couple of things. One is that they're unfamiliar with the technology, this dynamic, right? And we all are. This shift that happened because of COVID was immediate. We didn't have time to really figure out how to do this best. We were all thrown into it. So there's the unfamiliarity. And because of the unfamiliarity, we're trying our best to replicate what we're familiar with in an online environment. And the online environment is not best suited to a face-to-face a teacher-directed classroom, a face to, where the teacher is the center of attention. That it's really not best suited for that. So
No, no.
the tools that are available to us are still there, but they're not at the fingertips of most teachers that have been thrown into this situation.
See, Jeremy, I feel the tools have been there for a long time. I mean, I've been using them for 10 years, and who knows, I don't know at least since when other people may have been using them.
Right.
I've been personally using them for 10 years. The tools have been there. So, see, it was with COVID. I mean, it was something like as if it feels as if it's been thrust upon us. The tools have been there. If we don't use them, if we don't adapt to them, if we don't scale up with time, perhaps when the challenge happens in our life, which we cannot control, then it will be thrust upon us.
Right.
Change is either gradual or it is something which just happens overnight because you don't have any other options. But there are only two ways of
Right.
adapting to change.
And I think that there's certainly a spectrum of involvement for teachers across the globe in terms of how much preparation they've been doing to get used to these tools that have been available this long, and there's varying degrees of readiness that these teachers found themselves in, but also these tools, although they've been available, there hasn't always been it hasn't always been available to certain districts that may not have the resources to make these tools available for their teachers and their students, because the economic the difference, the socioeconomic difference from one district to another in the United States, at least, is vast. So you might have a district like mine where every student has a Chromebook, and then you might have another district where you've got maybe a lab that you can sign up for. Maybe you've got a rolling cart of laptops that you can use and you're competing with other teachers for. Maybe you're only using textbooks. The difference in the environment created by those two ends of the spectrum is like black and white. It's night and day. And when you have the resources that I've been fortunate enough to have, certainly there's more opportunities to experiment. But even then, unless there's specific training that's been identified that's related to this kind of teaching by the district, you're not necessarily going to have time to experiment with the tools that are most effective. And gamification tools, there's a mental shift that has to happen too, because this hard work bias is part of I think worldwide culture, that
Yes.
that we need to train our students to get used to the work world, which is also not fun, right? When we get into our careers, we're going to be going through drudgery. It's going to be something that's painful. We're going to be living for our weekends, which is because so many of us do that. We're expecting our children to get used to that environment, but neither has to be true. Our work environment doesn't have to be painful either.
Not at all. Not at all.
Right. So shifting the mindset of our teachers and learners and culture is part of the goal here. If we don't do that, then we're going to be fighting an uphill battle. So that's part of the mission here, is to reframe failure, reframe gamification. Even I've spoken to some corporate trainers, and certainly I think these tools apply in corporate as well. I think anybody enjoys gaming, adults and children. Adults play games. It might be a different type of game, but they play games. Everyone enjoys fun. It's a safe, and a game by definition, according to Ralph Koster, is just it's this controlled environment in which you can learn something safely and also experience. And now I'm paraphrasing here, but you can also experience some of the failures in a safe environment. So that's what makes a game. So how is that not fun? How is learning something
it is
new?
great fun.
Improving yourself.
I just have to give a personal input over here. In my home office, we have a game zone separate. There's a table set up only for gaming. And after the work is over, all of us, whosoever gets, this is an office which is used by a couple of people, me, my son, both use that same office. Whosoever gets to the game zone first gets the hold of it for at least 1 hour or more than that. So
that's great. That's great.
That's how it is. That's how it is. It's just it attracts everybody. It really
Right.
attracts everybody, and that's how education should be. I personally am giving my whole attention to making education as engaging as possible, whether it is uh, kid education, kid pedagogy, or andragogy, as they call it, but whatever. Let's not go into the technical jargon of it. Whether it is adult education or kid education,
Right.
education as such across the board has to be very, very interesting, engaging. Otherwise, why would we want something boring coming into our lives?
Right. And it,
We already
and
have.
not only is it a choice that we need to make, it's absolutely essential, because we can't continue to educate our students the way that we used to. We can't there we
Yes.
just we're not going to be able to convince them to just listen to us because we're an authority figure anymore.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
It's not enough. Even if culture were to, I mean, and if we did, it wouldn't be as effective, because learning because of fear is not going to have the same impact as learning because of enjoyment, learning because it's something that you're passionate about or that you're interested in. That intrinsic motivation is when you set up the environment properly, the learning itself becomes the game. It becomes the enjoyment. I probably should have done this earlier in the podcast, but I ought to distinguish between gamification, extrinsic motivation techniques, and intrinsic motivation techniques. The extrinsic motivation techniques used for gamification are what one normally associates with gamification, and that would be badges, points, leaderboards, the more obvious affect. What's the word I'm looking for? The more obvious manifestations of a gamified environment. You can see
Right.
those, and they're easy to apply. Um, so, but those are only motivating. And I tried this this is my first iteration of the game experience in my classroom. I tried this, and I did have more success than I had without it. But the success was limited on many of my students who were discouraged by a competitive environment. And that's what you create when you have badges and points and leaderboards. You're creating competition. There are other kinds of games that are not competitive at all. They're exploration. They're experimentation. They're creative building. All of those. There are games. There are video games that target those kinds of players, and the game designers have even come up with a formula and surveys to kind of to figure out what motivates your players. There are different types of players, as I mentioned. You've got, and one of the definitions is one category is called killers, and those are the ones that tend to like to compete. And so you might often see, a war game falling in, appealing to the quote unquote killers. Whereas, and then explorers is another category, and so on. So we have to create a varied enough environment so that all kinds of learners are going to be stimulated by this. And when you create choice, you are making it more likely that you're going to be targeting multiple different types of
Yes, different
learners.
personality types also will play a role over here. I've been thinking of doing a live show myself as my solo live stream on different personality types. It's very essential for everybody to understand different personality types. Perhaps after I do it, I'll hook it up with this one, so it will appear on the suggestions so that people can go and watch it. Uh, I'll send you the link later on of that also. And Jeremy, one thing you said which really attracted my attention was the education as such is shifting from instructors or teachers or trainers or coaches remaining in authority positions to authenticity positions. This is a shift from authority to authenticity. People need to see you as authentic individuals. In fact, yesterday I uploaded one video on authenticity. Today, it is not about my solution is the best or my structure is the best or do it my way kind of instructional approach. It's all about authenticity, when people can relate with you, when people can talk to you, when people can bring up their queries to you, whether those people are sixth graders or grad school graders or they are corporate executives or anybody in the spectrum, anybody who is a learner all through their life. I think all of us are learners in some ways or the others, whether we are into the in the formal learning process or go through the informal learning process. Everybody is a learner as such.
Absolutely. And recognizing that is essential if you want to be successful today. I think that you are always
Yes.
growing, always changing. You can't expect that what you know at any point is going to be enough to carry you forward very far.
Oh, no, 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 absolutely.
And I think the environment, I mean, the internet has created this environment too, in which not only the internet, but the media, the news media, information media, all of this has created a very savvy public, or at least a more savvy public, in that uh, children and adults recognize that no one source is, well, I don't know if I can say this. Let me be careful. So recognize that there are multiple conflicting points of view, right? You can't
Yes,
not be aware of that and be on the internet today. You know that
absolutely.
there are perspectives, right? And you may dismiss some of those perspectives, but you are aware that there are multiple perspectives. So for someone to come up and present as a teacher and say this is the right perspective, there's going to be
A great
hesitation
big
on the part of the
conflict
students.
somewhere.
Right. Some might happen to agree with you, or some might come from an environment that tends to align with the teacher's perspective, but others
Yes.
will not. And so you can't be the Walter Cronkite of your classroom anymore. And I use his name somewhat flippantly, but he was the one newscaster in the United States that everyone trusted. Everyone watched until he retired. And I'm oversimplifying, but this is before you had so many competing news stations with multiple perspectives, with the obvious multiple perspectives. Walter Cronkite's perspective was sort of centrist. In the entire country, most people in the country, it seemed, and this is when I was young, trusted his point of view. When he turned and started to question the Vietnam War, that was a turning point in the public's view of the Vietnam War. I mean, that's amazing that we were all so aligned in one country, according to the news media, especially when you think about how polarized we are today. So for us to for teachers can't get away with that anymore. We can't go in there and say this is the one way to do things, because with access to the internet that everyone has, it's just not.
Everybody is like a broadcast station in themselves. They can just get out and say whatever they want on the internet, and it goes all over the world viral. Sometimes, many times, and it just becomes like the leaders speak, as they say, with many followers just joining in. So,
That's right.
that's the world we are living in today. No
That's
one
right.
person is an authority. No one approach is an authority,
Right.
and we need to acknowledge this.
We do. And it's not turning out the way it could. We're creating these little bubbles, these little insulated bubbles of information that makes us comfortable.
That's very
And I think one of the teachers' roles is to pop those bubbles and expose, to encourage the
It's not
learner
just
to really listen and pay attention to the other point of view.
True.
So, and that's what the internet makes possible. Now, it's of course, even adults like myself who work with this stuff have a challenge finding reliable information from multiple points of view. How do we do that? How do we navigate that? It is a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. That really needs to be a large focus of how we teach these days. How do we find the information? How do we create? So one of the beauties of the one-to-one device to learner situation that we can more easily afford than ever before. I mean, Chromebooks are $150 to $200 a piece. A textbook is $75. Textbook is obsolete the moment it's printed. A Chromebook is going to provide up-to-date, current information about the entire world for as long as it works. So it's possible for us to invest in this one-to-one relationship, and because of COVID, we're forced to.
Yes,
Forced to. So I see that as a good thing, as long as we start to use these Chromebooks as what they can be, which is it's the closest thing to creating a one-to-one teacher-to-learner environment that you can get in a classroom. You can create a personalized environment for each student, an environment that has enough choices that your student can find something of interest within your subject area and go off on a path that is of interest to them, and then come back, report to the class about what they've learned, and they've been totally engaged because they have some choice there. They're the ones, they're asking for your help to pursue their own interest, right? And this is more and more possible. It's labor intensive up front, but you create an environment that makes for much easier classroom management. Now, I know that so many teachers, another reason that teachers struggle with this is the fear of letting go of that control, because that discipline was how we were raised in the teaching environment, because learning was expected to be something that wasn't fun, and in order to get engagement, in order to get to manage your class, you had to have them recognize who the authority was and obey. Now, to switch things around, to get the engagement now, you don't, if you create an engaging learning environment, you don't have to worry about the management as much, because they want your help. They're not competing with you. They don't want to disrupt your class. They want to play.
Yes.
And they want your help to play effectively. So when you shift that, and that's I had the privilege of enjoying that shift, when moving from that presenter who loved the attention, who dressed up in class and struggled, and was often successful, but still struggled to pull them in, to get them to pay attention to me for 42 minutes at a pop. That's 42 minutes. Come on. I mean, that's a long time to sustain attention for adults these days, right? I mean,
We've been speaking right now for 45 minutes.
Oh
The
no, I've lost 90% of my audience.
Don't worry about it. When you said 45 minutes, 42 minutes, I just wanted to bring this up. Because,
Okay.
see, it's very important to be creating an engaging environment.
Right.
The word engaging need not be bothersome to anybody. I think two people can engage in a conversation and can go on and on and on, provided they are themselves not boring people and the subject that they are talking about is of interest to both of them. Engagement
Well, at the very
is
least,
very
we've
simple.
engaged each other for 43 minutes, and hopefully the audience as well. But nowadays you don't need to. You can set them up with a couple of minutes of instruction early on, and then with the time that the teacher can put in, the time investing in the design of the lesson is more important than the actual presentation of the lesson. You design it so that they can do their own work. You design it so that it feels like a game, and they're doing their own work, and they're collaborating, and they want to achieve their own goals. That's possible today with the internet, and it's much. I've found it to be much more effective, no matter what the age group, no matter what the subject area.
Same way with me. I've always found this extremely engaging, extremely interesting, and so much more that you can actually go about doing over here in this kind of an environment, in the internet-based environment, which you can't possibly do in the face-to-face situation. So we need to recognize that. Jeremy, I would love to have you show us something. Can
Yes.
you?
Okay. Let's see if I can do that in our last couple of minutes here.
One
moment.
Let me bring it up to the stream
Okay.
and just tell us about it.
All right.
Yes.
So let me know when you can see what I'm seeing here.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So my courses are for instructors, and they can be L&D instructors in a business, or they can be teachers. The inspiration game is the one I recommend people start with first. And let's see here. Oh, I have to log in. My goodness. Let's see here. Log in. Okay.
You want me to take it off?
No, it's okay. It's hidden. It's no problem. Okay. So you log in, and then you're immediately presented with a narrative, and this is one way to create purpose, a sense of purpose. Now, if your subject matter feels relevant already to the student, then you're lucky, but it may not. So you can create an artificial sense of purpose by creating a narrative in which you have the student imagine themselves as someone else in an environment, an imaginary environment. In this case, I've sort of created this framework around the idea of saving the world by learning using questcraft. And questcraft is the creation of game-like lessons. So there's the narrative, there's the introduction, and I refer throughout the course to this pedagogy I designed that focuses on the importance of mastery, agency, and meaning that we were talking about earlier, and the various techniques that can help achieve that. And then also I do address the extrinsic techniques as well. And then each lesson includes the mastery, the opportunity for mastery, the opportunity for choice, and that sense of purpose, which are, again, the most important things. The content, I use primarily videos here, but there's some reading as well, and the content is, the idea certainly is to make the content as engaging as possible. But if you create this framework, it'll be more engaging than it would otherwise be. Now, I do also have little games embedded in each lesson. So they're assessment games that are freely available to anyone that has the internet. This is not the quest. The quest is the lesson that includes the environment that creates mastery, agency, and purpose. You can use assessment games as part of that environment, but that's not the game itself. It is the assessment. It is an assessment tool, and it's fun. So this one, for example, is a matching game that's based on the content of the video that was just watched to help people reinforce the content and the skills. And then there's an opportunity, and this is the most important part of each lesson, is the opportunity to create. Because at the top of the Bloom's taxonomy, the learning hierarchy, creation's at the top. And we know that more and more careers require creative skills, problem-solving skills. The rote mechanic memorization skills of the industrial era are the need for those in the workplace is disappearing. So we need to build creative skills. So there's an opportunity to create your own game as a teacher. Here you are creating your own game, assessment game like the one you just played, about a content area of your choice. You share it in this table here, and then you can also give feedback to other players of the game, and that way it's a peer-reviewed process. That's the only kind of it's an effective assessment process. There's a lot of studies that show that peer review is as, if not more effective than teacher review, assuming that you've trained your peers with the appropriate rubric. And even self evaluation is an effective and often more effective way to assess progress than that done by a teacher. There are studies that show that. And then I do some metacognition with my learners. I show them which techniques I used in the lesson itself, so they can reflect upon just what they've seen in the lesson they just participated in. This is the puzzle of motivation quest, so they can look and see which techniques I use in the puzzle of motivation quest, and they can comment to me about how effective they thought those techniques were and help me learn from my failures. So I realize that we're really short on time here, but that's the basic model for all of my lessons, my quests, so to speak, in all of my courses. And the courses are, yeah. Thank you.
That's just great. Jeremy, I am also building a marketplace which will be launched very soon, perhaps by this month or next month. We are already a bit late on the launch, but that's okay. See, it's all about understanding when you are absolutely ready to launch something, and a couple of months really don't make that much of a difference. We started working on it last year, and it is all about people who have great big amount of knowledge available to them in any field, which they wish to turn into an online learning environment opportunity for themselves as well as for others.
Okay. Well, they could learn from.
It's just about it. That's. I mean, just in two sentences, how I can submit it. It's because somehow, after COVID-19, everybody is telling me, whoever has seen it, that how did you come up with relevant ideas so quickly and this and that. It's just not a product of COVID-19. It's a product of my 10 years of working online in this environment and loving it so much that I've just thought that there's so many traders, coaches, educationists, and even if the people have not been in the field of education and they have had specialized education,
anyone can learn this.
They can share it. They can share it with other people. Like the other day, I was speaking with somebody, and This lady has an autistic child, and she was telling me that how do I participate in it? I said, see, you may be educated in psychology and this and that, or you may not be educated in psychology, but the experience of bringing up an autistic child for 14, 15 years has taught you so
Yes.
much.
Yes.
What about that practical experiential learning? You think other people can benefit from it? I think, I think it can.
Everyone
It's
can be a
super.
teacher. Everyone can be and
Every
should be a teacher. You learn more from teaching than you do from being a student. And by making our students teachers, we are teaching them better than by teaching them. I know that's a lot of a lot of
to put, but it makes
alliteration,
sense. It makes
repetitiveness, but
perfect sense to me.
yeah, so by making my students the experts, they are more engaged, and they are learning more by teaching their fellow students than the students are, no matter how engaging that student was, than the students themselves are by learning from that student, or even from me. So by creating that environment, that expertise environment, that creation environment, that's part of the each one of my courses, each one of my lessons, that is the ultimate goal. Is to get them to feel so confident about their content, to enjoy, to become, like, the ultimate goal is to create learners, not to teach content. Is to create people that know how to find information, learn information, and share information, and anyone can learn it.
Anybody can do it, and in fact, it is a very good business model also, because everybody is sitting on a bunch of knowledge. What if they learn to disseminate it properly, channelize it properly through the internet, so that it goes out into the world and bring them a lot of customers? I know a lot of people who have made great fortunes, uh, turned into multiple streams of income just by creating courses, just by creating a learning environment. And they're just sharing and sharing and sharing, and that's turned them into millionaires. So, see, ultimate goal may not be exactly that, or it may be. I mean, money is not really bad, it doesn't hurt anybody,
No, it's an
because
essential part of life
it's
nowadays.
an
We need
essential part of life.
food,
So,
clothing, and shelter. Can't buy without
absolutely,
money. Yeah, well, I
absolutely,
mean, you can create it, but
absolutely,
anyway.
absolutely. So why not make learning fun for everybody? And this is something that I tell all the corporate trainers, I tell all the coaches, I tell everybody, because I'm also launching a marketplace which is definitely in the process of getting populated right now. And we want people to share more and more of their experiences, because they can upload it absolutely for free. We'll do the hosting for them. And I feel it is a great, brilliant business model which is going to stay for a long time. So thank you
I
so much,
agree.
Jeremy, for sharing your experiences. And this Fail University idea is just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I wish you so very best in the endeavors that you are coming up with. Do keep sharing with us. I mean, now that we have known each other for some time, we've been friends. Just please keep sharing, and maybe one day it will become a business opportunity for the both of us, how we can interact and how we can do it. And that's how the business is going to be done in the times to come. And the
Um,
sooner we wake up to this, the better it is. I have a comment coming from a person called Bhuvan Bagwe. He has been a regular to all of the shows, most of the shows at least. I've never met him. I've only known him through either YouTube or Facebook, but we've been communicating, and he's saying it's a very nice initiative. Thank you, Bhuvan. So
Thank you.
it's that's the power of the internet. You have a fan here in India also now.
I'm grateful.
Right.
Well, I'm
So
already getting ideas of how we can collaborate, Neena, so we'll have to talk.
we'll talk very soon. We'll definitely talk very soon. And thank you so much for being here, Jeremy, for accepting the invite to be on the podcast. You've
Thank you
added
for the invitation.
so much of value, and we'll take it forward definitely. And that's how you can. Everybody can work brilliantly with people from all over the world. The world is full of brilliant people. The world is full of productive people who are sitting at home and doing wonderful work. And that's it. And
That's
I
right.
know, Jeremy, you had to send your kid and your pet
my
outside.
whole family, including the animals, away so that we could have a little peace and
We can
quiet.
talk.
4 teenagers at home, it's a challenge,
So
but we're all dealing with the same challenge nowadays.
yes, please apologize to them from my side. We kept them out for some time, but this was only to create a great episode. I mean, a great content enriched episode. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone who's been here watching this show live. And I thank the audience who's going to watch it later on also. Thank you very much. Bye bye.